Right, Morena koutou. Nau mai, haere mai, piki mai, te whare o Tamaki Nui Arua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. A very warm welcome to our council meeting today and to the council chambers. Welcome to you all. Today, just noting we do have some councillors online. I'll open with a karakia. If I could just ask councillors to stand and we'll have the words up on screen. You're very welcome to join in. On my fault. Right. I don't have any formal apologies, but one for lateness from Councillor Peter Johns. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Sutherland. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Councillors, could I always also ask, it did pop up and was brought to my attention late last night that we did have a sad passing within the district. Former Horizons councillor and chairman Garrick Murfitt passed away over the weekend. I didn't see it until last night. The funeral was today. Garrick was involved with Horizons for the best part of 20 years. He started as a statutory appointed member before being elected to represent the Tararua District. He served his final 2 terms from 2004 to 2010 as our chairman. He was a hill country farmer in Pahiatua. Garrick guided through various challenges, including the recovery from the 2004 floods. He was passionate about the Manawatu River, helping to create the Manawatu River Leaders Accord, an agreement signed by dozens of partners to enhance the health at the Awa. He was committed to working with Māori communities and was involved in a number of collaborative initiatives involving local government, iwi and hapu, and government agencies. Garrick was made a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit in 2010, New Year's Honours for services to local body affairs, agriculture and the community, and spent 4 years on the New Zealand Geographic Board. He was a larger-than-life character, a man of public service, and will be sorely missed. I also had the privilege of meeting with Garrick before he left the district and again, advocating for his community and for more. So right until the end, our thoughts are with his family and his friends, and I'm very sorry I can't attend his service today. So if I just ask for a moment's silence and remembrance. For a public forum today, we do have some guests here with us. So first up from Rangatane Iwi, Stephen Paiwai. If you're welcome to come up to the front. We've got 4 seats available there. Because we do have councillors Only 4. Might need them all. The microphones at the front, they should all just be turned on at the side, but if you just press that little red button, it helps people hear and hear, but actually it's essential for them to hear online. And this meeting is recorded, so just if they can't hear online, it makes it difficult to understand the proceedings. So welcome, Stephen.
Thanks very much. Tēnā koutou katoa, or Stephen Whaiwong. I'm here to talk about Māori wards, and look, I'm thrilled. I guess everyone here is here to support that, so that's great. Look, firstly, I just want to endorse your words, Tracy, to Garrett. I wasn't aware of that, but yep, I know what a great job he did for the district. So just sympathy to his family. Well, I feel like I'm talking to the converted. I'm heartened by the attendance here today, and I was really heartened by the opening of the meeting, the karakia that we did, and I think that just shows the partnership that Māori have with the Tararua District Council. So as I say, I'm heartened. Obviously, support the Māori board, and we certainly support the incumbent, Chase, and we endorse the recommendation made to the council by the staff or management who retain the Māori ward. You're guided by legislation, which we understand. There'll be a referendum at the next local body elections. That kind of makes sense. That's what you're required to do. But then you've gone another step further, which is allowed for that. Whatever the outcome of that election or that referendum, that the term will continue until the 2028 election. So that's what legislation says, and you're following that, and we're very happy with that. I think that we've always had a good relationship. Māori have had a good relationship with the Tararua District Council, and I think that's been enhanced by the having a Māori ward. And I just want to congratulate the council for taking that step back in 2021. And I hope you've seen some of the benefits like we have. And one of the benefits is that we have greater confidence in the council. And we've looked at the attendance today. I'm making the assumption that you're all supporting Māori wards. We've got the confidence to come here and support something that's cares for our heart. So I don't want to go on too long, but one of the other things, two other things that I want to cover is that the Institute of Directors recommends diversity around the governance table, around the board table. By having a Māori ward, we're seeing that. Very fortunate to have two bright young ladies that are currently on the council, and in my opinion, doing a very good job. Māori traditionally haven't been great at participating, voting, but I think with both the Māori ward and our current representatives, that's given Māori the confidence, and we're seeing that here today, to actually approach them and approach the council with those issues that that they may have. So I think the Māori ward has made a difference for Māori and the council. And as I say, when I see how the meeting was open, I'm heartened. So I've just come here to say, one, support the Māori ward, and I'd urge the councillors to support the recommendation of the paper that you're going to be. With that, tēnā koutou.
Thank you, Matua Stephen. Does anyone have any questions? That's great. Okay, I have a representation next from Ngāti Kahanunu ki Tāmaki Nui Arua. If you'd like to come forward with your team, welcome Hayden. Lovely to see Uncle Ivan here. And all the kaumātua that have taken the time to give us their presence and their mana.
Tēnā tātou. Mai rā, kia tau te mauri ki runga i tēnei hui ngā, kia tapatahi ai o mātou nākau, kia tūtuki te a mātou e whai ai, tūturi rongo whakamaua kia tēnā. Hui tēnā tātou i te whānau o Tāmaki Nui Arua, ngā mihi ki a koutou i te tiepu, rangatira mā, ngā mihi ki a koe, Tracy. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge Naima, our representative at the table for our Māori ward. It's probably been the most challenging and hard time to be sitting in that seat. Hopefully moving forward into the future, it will be a lot easier. I know that she has received a number of different types of emails in her term at being on that seat, which are not very pleasant and nice, but she's been strong enough to take on all of that and represent us well as I support our kōrero from Stephen. But the strength of having Naima at the table is the fact that she is supported by a large number of whānau, and that's who you see here today. That is all of us. We are not just here to represent and support the seat, we're actually here to support our whānau. So I just want to mihi to you, Naima, and all the other things you do in our community. That's why you're here, because you're a leader. Secondly, I just want to acknowledge and thank the previous council for making the right decision to have a Māori ward back in June 30th or 2021. I'm actually not here today to ask for more. I'm not here today to ask for to continue the Māori ward seat. I feel a little bit like Oliver Twist, having to turn up and ask for some more. Sir, may we have some more? No, Kyle. We have already made a decision in this whare, as leaders on the day, that we accept a Māori ward at this table. And we are here as Ngāti Kahanunu whānau, Rangitāne whānau, o Tāmaki Nui Arua, to reaffirm that we will honour the decision we made on that day and continue moving into the future collectively. We've seen what we can do in COVID, we've seen what we can do in Gabriel, and we can see what we can do out on the sports field together as whānau. So I'm not here to ask for more. Yesterday, I sat in the room with the commissioner from Singapore. As some of you will know, we're doing some investment there with them. He spoke to me about his time here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and how important it is to have relationships and connections, especially with Māori. We have a taonga that's in the airport, one of the largest airports in the world, that represents the connection between the Singaporean people and Māori. and Aotearoa, but through a Māori lens. So we use our culture to embrace the rest of the world to come here and do business with all of us. We've got international countries who love to have Māori at the table. So again, I come home from Wellington. I was supposed to be in Hui in Wellington today, but I come home for this. Where our petals are buried, where our tupuna are buried, where we have lived all our lives, and here we are asking, can we speak at the table to represent Te Ao Māori? We thank those, as I said before, those who have already accepted the fact that we have a seat at this table, and we want to continue that. We want to continue moving forward. As important as my hui are down in Wellington, this one is just as important. But the reason why I came and made the journey back, because I have to go back early tomorrow morning, was I was given this gift yesterday, this taonga. If I can just have over this so everyone can see it. This taonga was sent to me by Lonnie Ali. There's only 3 of them in the world. One that hangs in the office of Muhammad Ali. The other one is in the person who gave me it, its office. And this will hang in our office. As you can see, it has nothing to do with boxing. It has everything to do with being honourable. It has everything to do with standing up for your rights. Mana motu hake, tino ranga tiratanga. And so I say to you all today, be honourable. Stick to your word. The only time we renege is when we're in the shed playing yuka. You know, let's be the greatest in our community. People who try and make decisions for us that don't live here, we all got to live with each other. We all got to see each other, and let us be in charge of our destiny. If anybody's got a problem with the decisions we make here in Tāmaki Niuerua, haramai, come here, tell them to sit across the table from us, and let's have the conversation with them. This is our mana, this is our rohe. Let's stick together, let's be honourable, and in Muhammad Ali's words, let's be the greatest. Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Hayden. Do I have Angus? Did Angus Maniapoto wish to speak?
Sure.
Angus, can I just get you to turn just the little button in front of you on the mic?
All right. Kia ora. First and foremost, I give thanks and praise unto God for his mercy forever. May his blessings be upon us all today. My name's Rotohiko Maniapoto. I'm here on behalf of my whānau and the descendants of Mihi and Juri Pine, the owners of Tahoraki Block with sewage pond and rubbish dumpers. I'm here to speak. We have two grievances. The first grievance is, after reading through the Tararua District paper, that there was a plan to put a solar farm on an unutilised block of land, which was originally ours. We want that stopped, buried, and I have no apologies about that. Secondly, we, the whānau, would like to see our land given back. To get this straight, I need to give you some history on it. A lot of you probably don't know how those dumps and those sewage ponds ended up there. It wasn't just our whānau, the Pine whānau that was affected by it. It was our neighbours across the fence too, the Peti whānau. Back in the early 70s, the council wanted more land. It was an open sewer going straight into the Mangatara River. They needed more land. They came to the owners, wanted to purchase the land. No way. So they went through the Kawanatanga and they used the Public Works Act to confiscate our land. Through that, there was a lot of fighting, protests about that action. All our whānaus protested, but more of us, my whānau, because it was going to affect us the most. 1964, 66, our mother and father built us a house down on Makirikiri Road on their block of land. And when it was discovered where they were wanting to put this thing, my father and my mother protested hard. There was newspaper reports. I think there was even a chance when they ended up on TV. But to no travail, as was already a done deal. Unbeknown to us, our lawyer was also the lawyer for the council. So we got a deal on both hands. You know, so that's what happened with that land. We were brought up on that land before those ponds went there. That was our playground. A lot of the children my age, we were the last ones to play on that block before that was taken from us. What's the thing about it is that it was taken under the Public Works Act. So then when land on that act becomes unutilised, it's meant to get returned back to how it is originally and first offered back to the original owners. That's how that act works. So now the act that took our land is actually the act that's going to help us get it back. And it's a serious thing. You know, the injustices that has happened to us all, especially my whānau, they think that the mai has gone away after nearly 50 years. But every day we wake up and we take our first breath in the day, we're reminded of it. When we wake up and wipe the pikaro out of our eyes, we look upon it. It disheartens us. And before we get back in the house, hear from the dump all the beep beeps and the smash smash, reminds us of everything that went down, a raw deal. So we, as a descendant of my grandparents and as a child of my parents, I was not going to let this opportunity go by without standing up and making action on it. I'm just continuing what my parents done, and I saw it. I saw the weeping. I saw the stress and the pain that my parents went through, especially when they started to cut the trees down and started to dig up the whenua and seeing how close it was to us. Now, this unutilised land, before it became unutilised, it was all the spoil that came out of that pond was built up there. It was a big hill. I left there years ago. When I left there, it was still there. I came back every year and it was still there and it was good. It blocked that sight out of our minds and it sort of cleared the air a bit. But once they moved it, We see it and we smell it. So, you know, I think we've suffered enough. 50 years, nearly. And that's the grievance that I'm here about. Return of our land. It should be come to us first as an unutilized land. That's my understanding of that act. It was legislation that came in after the land wars. You know, they used the pen, took away the gun, used the pen. That's why they're saying the pen is sharper than the sword, because the pen can come around and strike you again and again. So, you know, I believe this won't be my last stand. I believe the way that the government's going with these fast tracking and want to bring that bill back in, that not just us, might have been us today, but there's going to be heaps of iwi, heaps of whānau that's going to fall into the same thing. So I give thanks to be able to stand here and have a say, put my expressions across behalf of my whānau, the relations, you know, and I give thanks that they get for support. The support is extreme, you know, so that's the grievances that I'm bringing forward to the council. Going to be a lot more that needs to be said about it. But, you know, that was the history on that land. It was stolen land. That's how you put it. When you take something from somebody who doesn't want to give it, it's stolen. It's good, whatever you like. Confiscated, modern day confiscation, whatever. We don't want to lose our land, and we definitely didn't want a tickle pot beside us. And that's why I understand how my parents went through that. It wasn't for them, it was for our sakes. The seed to come along, the generations to come along that would be suffering through this loss. And sister there, she's got the same loss. The whānau on the other side of the paddock, there's grievances there too. And, you know, and I'll support them if they want to take it further. So that's about all I have to say. I just give thanks for my whānau, all the other people here who know about this, and I'm sure they're in support of this. I just give thanks for these few words. So, you know, may these words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable within thy sight, O Jah, my strength and my redeemer, who liveth and reigneth in the hearts of all men.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Before you leave today, if I could have just asked you, even just at the front counter, if you can leave me your contact details. One of the things that the public works sector is always tough. One of the things that I'm most proud of with the Te Ahua Turanga Manawatu Tararua Highway is that public works sector Right. Councillors, just and members of the public here, I'm probably just on the limits of the council chamber safety, and I say that, so don't think executive, but in the case of an earthquake, this is a strengthened building, but the chief executive will be the controller and the warden should we need that. Thank you, Brian, if we follow his instructions. Okay. Are there any notification of items not on the agenda? And declarations of conflicts of interest in relation to today's meeting. I have one with item 10.3, the alcohol bylaw. I sit on that committee. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll declare a conflict on the licensing liquor bylaw as well. And I'd also like to declare a conflict in relation to the application for funding for the Pahiatua Museum for the upgrade of the Polish Memorial.
I'm sitting on the alcohol committee, so I'll just declare an interest in any decisions about that.
Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. Also declare an interest as I sit on the District Licensing Committee for the alcohol bylaw.
Right, can I just move to the confirmation of the minutes, and then I'm actually going to bring the item 10.1, the required decision making for the Māori ward forward, the agenda. So if I just move to the confirmation of the minute. Okay. Right. The confirmation of the council minutes for Wednesday, July 31st on page 5. Can I have somebody move they are a true and correct record? Councillor Johns and Councillor Franklin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Just going through those. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9, just an update on items 13.4, all of those remits, sorry, not quite all. I do have the remit on representation reviews was passed at 100%. The remit on community services, 98.35. The remit on local government constituencies and wards should not be subject to referendum was passed to 83.5%. Allows the delegate on the day whether to support or not to support the entrenchment of Māori wards was against, 40% for, 50% against. And that was in regard to the previous remit being fully supported. The supporting graduated driver licensing passed 83%. Supporting the remit of proactive lever to mitigate the deterioration of unoccupied buildings passed 90%. The appropriate funding models, lobbying for that to central government passed 96%, and supporting the remit of goods and services tax revenue sharing with local government passed 100%. Page 11, page 12, page 13, page 15. Just noting the civic honour awarded to Heather Monk. There is a high tea to be held at Pongaroa on September the 19th at 2 p.m. Invitations are to go out and we'll publicly notify that. Page 15, 16, 17.
Tracy, we can't hear. We've missed a lot. We can't hear it, but they hear us going.
Okay, I'll pull it right up like that. Is that better? Councillor Johns does tell me off for this. I'll just do this one formality, and it's just confirming the minutes and asking if there's any update. I'll go quick. Page 19. page 20, page 21, page 22, page 23. Oh, I did have a hand. And we did have a submitter that was going to speak to the keeping of animals bylaw, able to make it. Right, that concludes that part, and I will bring forward, councillors, if you're happy, the required decision making for the Māori ward, item 10.1 on page 29. Okay. Right.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. So this report is here in front of us due to legislation passed by the government that came into force from the 31st of July. That legislation requires all councils to make a decision before 6th of September on whether or not to reaffirm the continuation of its Māori ward or to disestablish the Māori ward. The timeframes set in the legislation don't provide any ability for any meaningful engagement to happen with the community that's most affected on this question of whether to retain or disestablish. So the recommendation we've put in the report is that the best way to continue is to honour the decision that was made by council in 2021 with the community and continue with the Māori ward. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Sally. We do have a recommendation on page 49, but I will give the opportunity for councillors to speak if they wish or ask any questions of Ellie. Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Can you hear me at the back? Thank you. I'm against this motion, and the reason being that I look at the people that spoke here today, and I just don't understand why they didn't stand for council. They're very articulate and really intelligent and well spoken. So for me, a number of people that are here in this room could have stood for council and also been voted in to council. And so I don't see any need for this particular seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Franklin.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. I totally disagree. I'm sorry, Councillor Long. I believe that saying that it's easy for iwi to get elected to councils is actually frankly naive. I think that that's been a challenge for them for many years. And I believe that by providing a Māori ward, you get that representation around this table. And for me, that's really important.
Thank you, Councillor Franklin. I'll go Councillor Johns and Councillor Gilmore.
Your Worship. There'll be many of you in the room here would recall that I was the only one at the last time we made a decision to have a Māori ward, and I opposed the motion. I won't go into the reasons for. People that were here will recall the reasons why. Primarily, it was more to do with most Māori in our district wouldn't have had the opportunity to vote, and therefore it was a flawed decision. Things needed to be sorted out before that could happen. Theoretically, or essentially, I'm of the view that democracy comes down to one person, one vote. However, in this instance, and things have, the climate's changed somewhat since that last decision, I'm in favour of the motion. I do agree with the comment that was made that it is difficult for Māori to be elected for a whole variety of reasons that we're all aware of. And I think it does provide an opportunity for Maori to have a view which we strongly endorse on council. We've been very fortunate to have Naoma as our Maori Ward councillor of the past 3 years or 2.5 years, and it's been most helpful. So I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Firstly, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry I couldn't be in the chamber with you all today, so I'm really sad not to be there. I see this as a really simple choice. I respect the decision made in the last term of council, and I see no reason at all to overturn it. Interestingly, I don't recall having a ratepayer face-to-face complain to me about that decision that the last council made. I don't recall it coming up once in the election campaign, and I've had nobody raise it with me since, apart from some recent form emails that we've received on both sides of the argument. I do feel that there's a bit of a misconception that a Māori ward councillor is somehow appointed. They are elected just like everyone else, with a similar proportionality to every other ward. There's no special treatment, and the voting process is no different to any other ward. Touching on what Councillor Johns was saying, it is absolutely one person, one vote. A decision to affirm a Māori ward seat will trigger a referendum. And I'm a strong believer in local voice, and I will trust our residents to make their choice, and I'll respect whatever they decide. I do want to just mention that I really feel for my colleague, Councillor Chase, who, unlike anyone else at this table, not only has to perform as a councillor, but she also has to justify the very seat that she sits at. Regardless of whether people agree or not with Māori wards, I hope that they share my empathy and my deep respect for her as an important part of our team. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Your Worship. I didn't really want to submit everyone to this view, but here as I sit under the mold of the Ruahinis, I'm deeply apologetic I can't be there with you in person. But it's fantastic to see the support and the turnout here this morning. I was a member of the council when we made this decision to have a Māori ward sitting around our table as a seat. I reflected long and hard on this very important decision that's been foisted on us by central government. I will support the motion today, and along with my colleagues that have spoken to it, I also, one of the other reasons I've reflected long and hard on this is that when you look at our voting papers, there's a Northern Ward rep and there's a Southern Ward rep. And each of those councillors that are appointed there to represent a Northern and the Southern Ward do so to represent a very important part of our community. Now, those ones are geographical, but the reason I'm so supportive of retaining a Māori ward is that seat is there to represent a part of Tararua and our community. And I concur with Councillor Gilmore and the comments that have been made around the respect and mana that Naoma has held as she's represented the Māori community in Tararua. I thank her for her courage and her demeanour throughout all of this process. And when it comes to the vote, Your Worship, I will support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wards. Councillor Chase.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the matter of significance, importance and sensitivity, the proposed disestablishment of the Māori ward seat for the Tararua district. This proposal is driven by the central current government directives raising critical concerns about its potential consequences and the impact it may have on our ratepayers. It is vital to carefully consider how this decision we make today affects our representation, our community trust and equitable inclusion of Māori perspective in our local governance. And it has been an absolute honour and privilege to have been elected in a democratic process as the first Tamaki Nui Aroa Māori Ward Councillor for the Tararua District Council. Our community is diverse, vibrant, shaped by the rich heritage and contributions of its Māori residents. The Māori Ward seat was established to ensure that this integral part of our population has representation that reflects their unique needs, perspective and aspirations. The current government passing a bill to tell the local government to disestablish this seat would not only undermine this representation, but also diminish the voice of an important community within our district. The Māori Ward seat amplifies our commitment to Tiriti o Waitangi by ensuring Māori representation, influence in local governance, embodying the treaty principles in partnership, protection and participation. This commitment is reflected in many of our long-term plans, our various consultation documents, which integrates the treaty principles and aims to address Māori perspectives and needs. The Māori seat is critical for acknowledging Māori historical and cultural significance, ensuring fair representation, fostering inclusive decision-making, thereby advancing reconciliations, equity and comprehensive community outcomes. To fully grasp the impact of the possibility of removing this seat, we must consider that Māori constitute 27% of Tararua district population, a significant demographic that deserves a dedicated representation. This population represents a vibrant community with unique cultures, as I've said, and the Māori seat is critical for ensuring these elements are effectively represented here at local governance. Disestablishing or not wanting this seat could lead to several negative consequences. It might erode trust between Māori communities and council by signalling a disregard for their roles and contributions, reduce engagement by underrepresenting Māori voices in decision-making process, and increase inequities by neglecting the specific needs and perspective of Māori residents, potentially resulting in decisions that disadvantage them. I urge you to consider the broader implications of disestablishing a Māori ward seat. It is not merely a matter of administrative structure, but the reflection of our values as a community. Upholding the Māori ward seat is a testament to our commitment to inclusiveness, fairness, and respect for all of our residents. Let us continue to foster a community that is thriving in unity and where every voice is heard and every member feels represented and valued. My decision will be for Tararua District Council to retain the Māori ward seat, and I will be strongly advocating for our community to support it, so that one day our mokopuna can be sitting around these tables being heard in these very important chambers.
Thank you, Naima. Councillor Pete Weber.
Mai haere mai, welcome to you all, and special welcome to our kaumātua, mana whenua, and to all our Māori in the room and non-Māori. Thank you for your words, Stephen, Hayden and Angus. I feel you, and wow, I didn't think I'd be here having this conversation again after making history in 2021. It was huge in this chamber, and it was the highlight of my council time. Councillor Long, I hear your words, but in the past 30 years, prior to Naima and I, there were only 3 Māori tāne who were on the council. Matua Dennis Tatari, Koro Mullins and Mr. Tua. A poll, they're asking us to go back to a poll which will cost council extra dollars that is not budgeted for. Yet another unfunded government decision, a bit like fluoride in here today. Reversing us back 50 years, all that hard work and bringing us closer to iwi and Māori in our community and the communication between us. Māori contribution adds to the necessary diversity of opinion and decision making at the council table. The Māori ward seat is for any Māori, not just Māori that whakapapa to Tamaki Nui Aroa. The Māori ward seat still represents the whole community, as Naima represents all of you and not just Māori. Māori knowledge and perspectives are hugely beneficial when considering land use, conservation practices, climate crisis response, local business, tourism, and the protection of our vulnerable communities. Working in accordance with the Local Government Act 2002, which recognises the Crown's responsibility to take the appropriate account of the principles of Te Tiri and the Treaty of Waitangi, and to maintain and improve opportunities for Māori to contribute to the local government decision-making process. This is refined by the Human Rights Commission recommendation that Māori voice be heard and represented in local government. Māori are the time travellers. We bring with us the past, our ancestors, the present, and our future, our mokopuna decisions. Tararua District Council has an obligation to provide greater recognition and representation of Māori at our council table, and in doing so we'll enjoy the benefits of a partnership that will enhance engagement with Māori, uphold the principles of participation, and allow a way for Māori perspectives to support and influence positivity in the Tararua District Council, potential thinking and action. Māori have always had to fight for everything and will keep fighting. Just wanted to, I've just got a little poem that came from Councillor Mohu from New Plymouth. Hope. Hope isn't blind optimism or blissful ignorance. Arrogance, sorry. Hope is the quintessential belief that exists inside us all. Hope is what gives us courage in the face of fear to keep working, to keep reaching, to keep striving, and to keep fighting. Hope is a promise kept that even in our darkest ways and our darkest days, we know tomorrow will be brighter. Thank you.
It's lovely to be back. Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. I was lucky enough to keep a file from 18th of May 2021, and it was quite a momentous day in this chambers, and I just reflected on my comments and others, but mainly my comments back then. My views haven't changed at all. But just before I make some other comments, I did welcome to everyone here, and I did listen carefully to Matua, Hayden and Stephen's comments, and I agree with some of those. I'm deeply saddened really by some of and particularly the emails and social media that our Maori councillors and Mayor Tracy have been subject to, irrespective of our views and our points of our views and other issues in the district. I'm saddened by the personal attacks and some of the comments that have come through those, and I know that it's a tiny bit of our community, but it is sad that that's now the nature of the beast a bit in the society in which we live in. And it's easy to be abusive and attack people at a distance. So that does sadden me. But just going back to Hayden's comments about where I think there's been great maturity and the relationships have strengthened in the recent years with Māori and the council. And I go back to when I was on the council in 1995 to 2001, and I sat on the council then with Koro Mullins. And I think about that time was the first memorandum of understanding was signed with Rangitani, and it was difficult getting the relationships were a bit stretched there at times. And then I go back since then, we've had further memorandums of understanding signed with Kahununu, and we've had settlement bills and all these all these things. And Maori's position or Maori's partnership with us have been entrenched quite clearly in those settlements. And I was reading those last night, and it just reinforced my thinking that since my early days, things have come a long way. And a lot of friends of mine sit in this room, people I respect, have listened to in the past. And Era mentioned a friend of mine who's now passed away. He was a councillor in the Borough Council, Councillor Hepa Tatri. And Hepa used to make a point when I got back on the council of turning up in my office in High Street now and again, sipping there in his electric scooter. And he used to give me quite his point of view and the rest of the community. And he often put me back in my seat and said, you need to consider these things. And I've never forgotten those things. I miss that greatly. But I think we have been inundated just recently with emails, and I guess all councils that are going through this process have. And these come from different sources, but most of them are some in favour of the Maori Ward, to be fair, some very, very strong ones in favour we've received, some against. And I noted in some of the emails against Maori Wards have made a point of referring that we shouldn't have a referendum. The referendum that we would have if we pass this motion today in 2025 will incur costs and have very little or no chance of succeeding nationwide. But it is with interest this last week I've noted both Napier and Hastings City Council have polled their ratepayers, and both communities have come out very, very strongly in supporting a poll in 2025, and that's an enlightening change to the rate views, and that's across in many areas. That's the case. But I look at Tararua where we are, and Hayden commented on Cyclone Gabriel and COVID, and I sit here with great warmth and empathy and understanding that the first people to stand beside us in those days were the two iwi, and I haven't forgot that. And I think that's indicative of the relationship that we have got now and the community of Tararua, both between Māori and Pākehā, and also in the many other cultures that now exist in our community. I certainly support the motion and the 4.9, but I was just browsing through some bits and pieces last night, and we've just come back from a conference where we talked to Mayor Andy Watson of Rangatike at some length about other things, but I just noted in a submission he made to the select committee, and he said, to paraphrase most of it, he said, Maori wards have not just benefited Maori and local iwi, but also the wider community. The knowledge and perspective that this has provided to us at the council table is a taonga, and we believe the government's litigating this will create more division. And I think that's certainly the case. I know there is strong support for nationwide for one voice, one vote, and that will no doubt play out going forward. But I think, but I don't think that's going to benefit going forward anybody, and it's certainly not benefiting in our district and Tararua. And I think we need to stand strong for ourselves here. We have done in the past, and I'm sure the relationship is even better. And I note myself, as I've sat around the table for the last 4 years, the difference, I think the levels of communication and respect, I'm sure having two Māori on the council's helped that. But our relationships on a working basis from month to month with representatives of both iwi at our infrastructure meetings and there's important things to do with 3 waters ahead of us. And we need those relationships more than ever, and will do going forward. So I do thank you all for supporting the council, the Tararua District Council, and I certainly support continuation of the Maori wards itself. So yeah.
But I thank you, Councillor Sutherland. Are there any further speakers?
Looks like it's me. Yeah, kia ora.
I look around the room here, most of the people in the room I went to school with, so that's a good indicator. And we had some good times. And I still look at you as equal as I did then as now. I'm very confused, not confused, I'm very challenged with this motion. On one point, and that's separatism. I look at us, there's one race, there's only one race, and that's the human race. There's only one planet. And if we don't look after both, it's not going to be very good. I don't know if you know this stat, if the world stops turning for 1 second, do you know what happens? We go 840 kilometers that way, like that. So, believe me, this is a very hard decision for me, but I have to stick to my core values, and I will be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for sharing your views, and I hope that has been helpful. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Naomi Chase. She has made an incredibly valuable contribution and very, very quickly coming up to speed. And she's also made connections into parts of our community where they've felt comfortable relating to her with the kura, with the kohangas, with the marae committees. And I thank you for your hard work and for your dedication in making those connections for us. You've brought a Māori worldview to our table and helped us understand and kept that at the forefront. So you've been a very valuable counsellor, and nothing has hurt me more than to have to forward emails that if I wasn't required to, I wouldn't have done that. So I don't like to do that, and I think each one of those has started with arohamai. So I acknowledge that, and the fact that you have had to stand and represent the people of this district and the ward, but also to justify that has been difficult and can be a lonely road. And I acknowledge that, but I also thank the iwi and your whānau for supporting you through those challenging times. I think the stat that I usually use is a quarter of our population is Māori. So thank you. Today you've said that it's 27%, and I know that Naomi will know that. That's a large proportion of our district that we need to connect with. And I've had the privilege of taking that journey with both our iwi as those apologies have been made from the Crown, and seeing and feeling just what that meant along that journey. And it was a huge day here in council when we had the ability to bring in a Māori ward. And one of my biggest regrets is that we didn't, we have that recorded in the minutes, but you could not have recorded the heart and the emotion and the feeling for that. Prior to that day, the only really the times that I remember most when members of the community were in was actually around wastewater consents and chimes that were challenged. We weren't connected with that part of the community. So we've all travelled a journey together. And I think, you know, I'm not, the government has caused some division in this where they've forced us to make a choice in having a referendum or a disestablishment of those wards. Actually, I agree with Hayden, you made the comments around, you know, telling Tamaki Nui Rua what to do. Now, through COVID, through Cyclone Gabrielle, actually, it wasn't the government that was here, it was our people. In Cyclone Gabrielle, we were all here together, and we have become very united and working together. When we go to government, when somebody challenges Tamaki Nui Rua, we go together. We're there for each other, and that's unbreakable together. And we need that Māori ward seat to show that, to demonstrate that. It's each one of us has a role to play in talking about that in that community and gaining that support for that referendum. I believe that we have become far stronger through our relationships, and the Māori ward seat forms a part of that. and I'm very proud of that. And with that, I will always honour the decision that we made that day to introduce those wards, and I support and move the motion that we, in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Legislation and Māori Wards and Māori Constituencies Amendment Act, the Tararua District Council affirms its resolution of the 18th of May 2021 to establish the Tamaki Nui Aroa Award. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Chase. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
I'm just going to record the nays. Councillor Wards, can I just double check with you? And that might have been a time delay online. Your vote was in favour of the recommendation?
Yes, your worship, in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. We always need to check that time delay. And Councillor Long, would you like your vote against recorded? Councillor Wallace, would you like your vote recorded?
Yes, please.
It's recording Councillor Long and Councillor Wallace against that motion, and also thank you for your courage. Thank you, Councillor Johns. And I thank Councillor Long and Councillor Wallace for their courage in having their open conversation that everybody needed to hear. So thank you very much. That is a great day in the Tararua District. With that, I'm actually going to adjourn the meeting, I think, for a cup of coffee and a little bit of a break where you can welcome to stay and join with us. I'm not sure if I've got that many biscuits. So we'll join councillors until 11 a.m. Right, welcome back, councillors. Okay. Right, the next item on the agenda, councillors, we will go back to the community boards and committee minutes. But to get us back on track, if I can move to item 10.2, the Horizons Region Spaces and Places for Sport and Recreation. So, welcome. So, page 59.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll take the report largely as read, but would like to introduce Carl Johnston from Sport Manawatu.
Carl knows that gun very well as the previous manager at Manawatu District Council.
So I will hand over to Carl to just highlight any matters within the report and the document.
Thank you, Brian. Morning, everyone. My name's
We'll just get you to pop your mic on. That's excellent.
morning, everyone. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Brian, for that. My name's Carl Johnston. I'm the general manager at Sport 102. I've been there for just over 2 months now, so still trying to find my feet and working in Brad Cassidy's old role, if you've come across him in the past. So yeah, previously to that, I was at Manawatu District Council as the community assets manager. So for that, for my sins there was sort of everything that wasn't a road or a pipe, really. So I had pools and sports parks and playgrounds and street trees and beaches and all that sort of stuff. So quite a broad portfolio. And so I've got a fairly broad range of experience in that area. So more than happy to help out the TDC Council or Tararua Council where I can in this aspect. So been working with Fontaine, and Henekau has obviously been working across the organisation for a wee while as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me anyway. Previously the MDC, I was at Hamilton City Council. So yeah, local government's my background. You've taken the report as read. Just a little bit of background on this. So this is the second iteration of the sports facilities plan. The initial one was carried out in 2018, or signed off in 2018. It was quite a heavy, clunky space, that one. This one's sort of more of a refined, it was fairly facilities or inventory focused, whereas now we're more of a demand focus across the needs assessments that are carried out from them. So there's a strong emphasis on the tiriti aspect on there. And I think one of the aspects that I'd like to raise within this is one of the outputs will be the formulation of a steering group from all the TAs involved. So there were 7 TAs that were initially carried out from the Horizons region. 3 been in the north side, been Rangatiki, Ruapehu and Wanganui, and then from the southern side would be TDC, MDC, PNCC and HDC, each having a representative as part of the formulation of this plan. So there was Jess McKenzie was the representative from Tararua in the past. So yeah, there has been council input all the way through this process. Yeah, it just gives a greater regional collaboration, I think, in a good overview of where aspects are needed and where other projects are coming to fruition. So, and some of the ideas that we've spoken about at MDC was with the smaller councils, you become a jack of all trades. Whereas if we can pull all of the aspect or all of the facility sort of managers, you've got a good collective of experience and a good vision across the region. So that's sort of where this plan comes together. So any questions or hand over to
Councillor Petty Webber.
Thank you and welcome to the chamber. I do remember when this came through council last time and we didn't vote on it because it really, and it's sort, I don't think it's changed enough for me personally to vote on it because we have to travel. And this is still, we have to travel over the hill. You know, our children, and not everyone can afford to travel, and our high schools don't always get the funding. And to travel over the hill to to participate in sport. And I still don't think this is enough. For us, it doesn't benefit Tararua enough. And just some of the things that, looking into it, it says that we have got too many facilities and that we need to not look at building new ones. That's one point. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it. 6. Based on expected population growth and participation patterns, focus on repurposing, upgrading and sharing facilities rather than building new ones. That's all well and good, but some of our facilities don't even cater for what our children's needs now. Like our sports centre isn't long enough to have a netball game on. Like they play netball on it, yes, but it's too short. And it doesn't have, there's no runoff. So you can either run, the kids can run into the wall, adults can run into the wall if they, you know, like when you're really competitive, you want that ball and you're going to fight for it. And so you do just, so it's not safe. And so I don't agree with everything in here, but I do agree with some things. So that's just me looking at it from the outside, that I don't think it benefits Tararua enough. But thank you.
Councillor Chase.
Yeah, I'm in a bit of agreement with Councillor Edna Petty. When I look at this, I have to wonder how updated these stats are, because to be honest, I don't think it really reflects what is actually happening in the Tararua region, and a lot of the things that you see that we should focus on is very minimal, considering when you go to look at what you expect to do within the Manawatu district, the Fielding district, all of that. You've got new lights to help them see at night to be able to participate. We don't have any of that here. You don't have any of that input for Danny. We actually do need lights at all our facilities, to be honest. We need changing rooms at all our facilities. A number of our sports teams actually don't just participate in the Manawatu region, we actually also participate in the Hawke's Bay region. And we are honestly having to travel every time to be able to participate in any sport. I think you're right with the volunteer levels is diminishing, and maybe if we strengthen that, we may be able to have more competition over here, but we don't have the facilities to be able to play. And yet we have some of the big clubs over in Woodville, as well as Dannyburg. Dannyburg Tigers was named the Grassroots Club of the Year, and we're one of the biggest growing clubs around here. We don't have enough facilities. We're having to go out elsewhere. Yeah. So I don't agree that we have enough facilities here to be able to accommodate for our sport team. I'd like that tidied up a lot.
That's cool. And I suppose that's. Turn it off, does it? Sorry. Sorry. Okay. I'd agree with your comments, and I'm not disagreeing at all. And I guess this is for, if there's new facilities, and it sort of answers that second one as well, is lessons learned from obviously having too short a runoff on there. These are lessons learned, so we're not recreating that same fault. We can identify what doesn't work, and making any new facilities that are built, they're multi-purpose, so that we can use them for either pickleball or badminton or netball. Netball's kind of the main court that we'll use for a sizing if we go to build a new facility. It's the biggest court that is used out of all of the indoor court spaces. So yeah, it's a matter of continuing learning or not recreating the old facilities, and if we can adapt the existing facilities into a different facility now, like futsal or something. 30-40 years ago, when these facilities were built, futsal didn't exist. So it's a matter of having them flexible for the changing needs of the population for us. So yeah, but I do take your comments on board.
Let's go to the Chief Executive for a comment, then I've got Councillor Gilmore and Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to highlight that, like any sort of report that's been created as a collective, you need a voice at that table to be able to put that across. And the risk you run by maybe not supporting something that's not quite 100% is that you lose the voice to be able to influence any report going forward. And I always say it's much better to be at the table than the table to happen to you. And remember that this is also sits with Sport NZ, and then it filters down into the regions. And you can't underestimate, I guess, the influence that that organisation could have as well. So just want to sort of raise a bit of caution that maybe the report's not perfect, but it will provide us with an opportunity to tidy some of those things up, because I'm reasonably confident that those sort of things, if they was brought to the table through this body to this group, steering group, they would be ironed out.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship, and thanks very much for the report. I do have a lot of sympathy for what the Deputy Mayor and what Councillor Chase was talking about, and I suppose some of those came through in our discussions with our PARS strategy. But with your permission, Your Worship, I've got two questions which I might be able to just get out of the way with this. And perhaps it's through you to the Chief Executive. My first question is, we made some decisions with our Better Off funding to reallocate resources away from our PARS strategy, which this is, I think the report that we've got in front of us is reflective of the PARS strategy, but we've diverted funds back into our waters. Are we with this committing to something that we just can't deliver? We have no budget to be able to deliver what's in this plan, and are we effectively managing expectations is my first question.
Your Worship, it is a good question, and certainly from a operational aspect, and did look over at Carter about, you know, the resource that's required to support some of this. But I do think at this point it is minimal. It doesn't commit us to fund anything at this point. And certainly if we are at that table, no doubt, along with a lot of the other councils, probably with similar issues in terms of how we start allocating funding to this, would always have to be an annual plan or LTP discussion anyway. But at this stage, I think it's just shown more of a commitment that these are the areas that we're going to be looking at and focusing on, and maybe Carl could add to that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brian. That's correct. It's by no means are you committed to carrying out all of these identified options. All of this Heraki Tour is a regional plan. So if projects come through, a community club comes to you and says, we want to build a racetrack, regional racetrack. Well, there's already one at Manfield. So then we would create a steering group, and there'd be a business case carried out. And this would be basically a checkbox to make sure that we're not over demand. There's not an oversupply of any particular facility at a regional level. We're not taking the autonomy away from the local TA. If it's a local facility, then it runs through the standard annual plan or LTP process that it would. This is just has the plan for the layout for regional facilities or sub-regional facilities. Does that provide clarity, or does that make sense?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I might just ask my last question with your permission, Your Worship. The Chief Executive, so probably through you back to Brian, talked about the importance of being at the table and perhaps the resources required for that seat being minimal. Do we have sort of any idea of what that seat might cost? Obviously there's going to be staff time involved. I'm not sure, I suppose, what signing up to this or endorsing this would commit us to doing, particularly if you know, this is already, we've had a seat at the table, and Carl mentioned that as he opened it up, we've had staff at the table, and there is some concerns already about what's come back. Is there a cost? And I suppose I'm trying to work out, is there a benefit if that just continues? You know, there's one thing to have a seat at the table. There's a very, very different thing to actually influence what comes out of that seat. So I'm just trying to weigh that up.
Your Worship, I think there's been a lot of goodwill provided by Sport Manawatu to us, and we've maintained a relationship with them, and that's all good and well. But you know, I for one wouldn't be asking for goodwill to continue forever, and we get a seat at the table and all the benefits, but don't actually support it in essence. So that doesn't sit comfortably with me. To be fair, if we weren't to be really supportive and behind this, then I don't think we should have a seat at that table going forward. In terms of the staff time, yep. I mean, we are time poor, all of us. The staff are, but then you've got to weigh that up against the benefits of the work that has been done within the region, and I would be supportive of allocating a staff to participate and to provide that voice around the table, and that can then be reported back through to council and inputted through that mechanism as well. So I think overall, I think there is enough benefits to warrant some staff time to support this.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Wallace and Councillor Johns.
Yeah, just two quick ones. The size of our sports centre, that was right historically. The reason that was and is used to be roller skating and badminton. Okay, so we have this island mentality that still exists today with different sports things, but so that's the reason. Okay, that's an historic fact. The other thing, you got 32% of the population of Tararua District is inactive. Yeah. How did you get that percentage?
I can't comment on that one, unfortunately. That'll be, I've had to go back to Sporting Z and find out where those.
It's pretty scary. Yeah, but they could be playing bridge.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean a physical, you could be using this. Your brain is the most powerfulest thing in your body.
That's true, yeah. I can't, these would have come through from a census data or a survey carried. Sorry, these would have been carried out from a Sporting Z census data, I would expect, or a report from council input numbers. Expect, I would have thought. Thank you. Confirm, sorry.
Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, just briefly, I hear what Brian says about being at the table, and that's important, always is. But yes, if that brings responsibilities and or costs, then it's something we need to look at. But it's come at a bad time. We're sort of cutting everything to the quick, and our focus needs to be, as far as sport is concerned, on younger people and providing adequate, cost-effective facilities for football, netball, hockey, rugby, whatever. Not in Palmerston North. The basis of this is essentially centralisation to create one decent facility for equestrian or netball or whatever it might be. And that means basically going to Palmerston North or over the hill. As far as we're concerned, our focus should be on providing basic sporting and activity facilities within our district so that kids don't have to travel. We're a low decile district. Most parents will balk at taking carloads over the hill. They already do. We have problems with Woodville Soccer, for instance, suddenly hit with having to pay rates for the first time in however long, and balking at that, struggling to pay for that just to keep 120 kids on a Saturday morning playing football. Those are the areas we need to focus on. I accept that this is all, it's very nice, but it's at the wrong time for us, I believe.
Just a response. So we're not asking for anything financial at this stage. We're just asking for endorsement of the plan.
Does that bring with it a responsibility on us to do something?
If you, for your local led projects, this will have no involvement in that space. Like if another football club wants to build another park, that has no involvement in the space. It's just purely for regional or sub-regional facilities. Like if we're going to build another 10-court arena or something like that, or we've got Canoe Polo, which is set themselves up over in Palmerston North. They're looking at a regional facility. So they're actually running through this process now, and it's going through the needs assessment, the feasibility study, the business case on that sort of space. So, yeah.
I'll chase the last question. I'm going to wrap this.
If we were to, if we were to participate in this, would our stats be used to bolster Palmerston North's feasibility studies to have their sporting facilities that they want? To help with the regional verification of why they should have one.
They'll be utilised in the code, across the code. Yeah, I don't know.
Potentially, but that also works in the same way against, and I have actually seen that roll out in Palmerston North. I think some of the debate that they were having within their council chambers around facilities. I think the thing for me is the Tararua District Council didn't previously support this, and the angle was slightly different, and the fear was around it not supporting our funding applications and things like the Pahia to a pool may not have got off the ground. There was, regionally we don't, I think there's only one regional facility that's identified here, and that's the Dennyburg or Rangatira Croquet. It doesn't commit us to anything, but actually there's also no funding there. Councillors are correct. That has all been cut. And so when I read funding for, tracks and walkways and cycleways, that's, there is nothing there, but it doesn't commit us to anything. It would all have to go through an annual plan or a long-term plan process. I think when we talk about data-driving decisions, there is a place for providing for our young people, but actually we have a lot of more mature people that are looking for some of those recreation opportunities as well, with walking to, certain golf is certainly something that our golf courses are all on the map, Councillor Johns. So I'm far more comfortable with this. I guess the challenge is it does refer to the PARS strategy, which, literally has been stripped out in our long-term plan. The staff would need to bring this back. I think for us, they were generous in allowing us a seat at the table, but we didn't financially contribute, and we've probably had a very fair say throughout this process. But when Sport Manawatu came in and they supported and their submission for the Pahia to a pool, that was quite, that was one of the fears that was there. And when they came to chat to Brian and I around this, we talked all through that with the Chief Executive, Kelly Shanks, and that, we were worried about it having an influence on funding. I don't believe that's the case, and I am happy to support it. I think anything that we build or look to in the future will all have to stack up regardless, and that doesn't matter where it is within the region. So I am happy to support this. Councillors, we've got a recommendation on page 59 that 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3. Can I have somebody, I'm happy to move this motion myself. Can I have somebody second that? Councillor Sutherland, all those in favour please say aye. Against? Yeah. Councillor Peter Weber and Councillor Long, would you like those recorded? Yep. That's fine, thank you. The motion is carried. Thanks, Carl, for coming over.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to pass in the apologies from Kelly as well. She was hoping to be here, but she's in an RST CEO meeting stuff this morning. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. I hope you're enjoying your role.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Councillors, I'm going to move us away from the Pākehā Museum Society with the graciousness of Gilda. Thank you, and move on to item 10.4, the deliberations on matters raised during tranche 1 of the bylaws consultation on page 97, and welcome Jim and Joelle to the table. Jim, in introducing these, I know they're in order, and I also know that we're on limited time with Joelle. Which bylaw would you like to take first, utilising that time?
Through your worship, probably the keeping of animals bylaw.
I thought it might be. Keeping of animals bylaw, councillors, is starts on page 101, 6.4.
Through your worship, I believe Ali was going to speak to her paper, but are we here to clarify any questions?
As you can see, the paper sets out the different issues that were raised by submitters on each bylaw, and under each one, we've summarised the matters that have been brought up in the submissions and provided officer feedback on those, and have provided with some proposed recommendations under each one. So you'll find those throughout the report. Just wanted to speak about process. It's really important to remember that with a bylaw, because it involves people's rights and it gives us enforcement over their rights on their properties and their animals and things like that, that it is taken as a quasi-judicial decision-making process. So if, say, for example, if a person if there's no submissions on a bylaw, well, we can't really make any changes related to matters brought up by submissions. So any changes need to be to address matters that are brought up in submissions. So it's not a time that we could have an idea to say, oh, while we're deciding this, let's change this bit, because we haven't consulted on that. So it needs to be, we need to bear in mind the nature of the decision making that we're making, and that the rights of people to have seen what our proposed decisions were going to be, what the proposed wording of the bylaws were going to be, and keep with a fair process for that matter.
Just carrying on from that, a number of the submissions were from out of Tararua. Do we give them the same weight in our consideration as a ratepayer or a citizen of Tararua?
It's purely up to the council. There's no rule saying that only citizens of this town may submit on a matter, and they may be based in other towns, but they may also visit here. They may be intending to live here in the future. They might have family here or friends here. So, you know, that can't be part of a recommendation from us.
Yeah. So you're saying that now comes back to us. We have to wait that council. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Right, Jim, the keeping of animals bylaw. Firstly, I found the complaint categories are really good, gave me a really good understanding of just how much you deal with.
Thank you, Your Worship. We can also add to the cat nuisance. We've actually had 31 in the last 6 months relating to cat problems, and I think you asked about stock crossings too. Stock crossings, we've had 7 complaints in the last 12 months.
Jim, I think one of the questions I asked you just was around when you say cat nuisance, can you give councillors some understanding of what exactly that might mean?
Yeah, sure. So through your worship, we're actually dealing with a cat nuisance issue right now at the motor camp, where the manager there has reported 3 tomcats going into the kitchen and spraying everywhere. So we've got that issue, and we frequently get residents ringing up saying that feral cats have taken up residence under their homes, and they ask for help to trap them and remove them. So it seems to be quite a big issue here at the moment.
Thanks. Do any councillors have questions for Jim on the animal bylaw? Oh, sorry, the keeping of animals bylaw. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. First of all, through you to Jim and Joelle, I just wanted to commend and thank both Jim and Joelle for time. I had a number of specific questions just on that bylaw, so I'm very, very grateful for running through and clarifying a few things for me. Also really happy to see some of the changes that are in there. I'm having a look at our papers on page 109, sort of jumping down and having a look at the recommendations. And specifically, what I'd like to, I guess, get a slightly better understanding of is the recommendation 10.1, which is still asking or requiring approval from council to be keeping male animals. And particularly one of the things that came up in our submissions were rams and being able to have a ram to come in and to service to service sheep in an urban area. My question with this is, what would be the issue from an animal control perspective and a regulatory perspective if 10.1 was removed? Because I feel that it is quite adequately covered in 10.2 already. So if we do have complaints, if we do have nuisance, and I really take on board what these submissions were saying, if we do have complaints, then we have the ability then to enforce and then to require future permission. I suppose, and I kind of explained this, when I caught up with Jim, my view with a bylaw is there to solve a problem and to make sure we have adequate tools to be dealing with the problem. What I don't want to have is council, if people are not causing a problem, if people are doing everything that they should be doing, I don't necessarily think that they need a council staff member having to come over and visit them and give them permission. So I just want to double check that with Jim. I know we talked a little bit about it and there has been some changes made, but what would be the implications if 10.1 was removed and we relied on 10.2?
Through your worship, I'd say that the problems might, there may be a rather large issue, and I could refer to a recent news article just the other day, which occurred in Ashburton, where a chap was keeping 30 roosters, and the council received a complaint that 30 roosters were crowing at 4 a.m. So the roosters, ganders, peacocks, that sort of thing in 10.1 are not considered stock. So that's in the interpretation there, they've got a different definition. We also recently just had an incident where a ram was chasing kids down a residential street here in Dannyburg. So the reason that there's an express rule for stopping people from keeping those animals is due to complaints we've received in the past, and we know that these animals can be an issue throughout the country, actually. Rams especially can be quite dangerous. So we don't have an issue if people have got the correct fencing and they're not going to be a problem, not going to be a nuisance, then they can apply for a permit. That's not a problem. But more often than not, we will exercise the enforcement portion of the bylaw under complaints, or if we do happen to see something like too many head of stock on a quarter acre section or something like that. So we have made changes to the part where we said it didn't apply to sheep. We now allow dry stock and other animals, providing there's no complaints. But those particular animals in 10.1 are stipulated because of the reasons of the type of complaints that we can receive.
Can I ask a follow-up, Your Worship, if that's okay? And thanks very much for that, Jim. It's a really good explanation, and I think the sort of end of what you were saying kind of encapsulates some of my concerns, and perhaps goes to the heart of what some of the submissions were talking about. When you were talking about we would only look at exercising the bylaw under a complaint, which I completely appreciate. I suppose that's a bit where I wonder whether 10.1 is redundant, because 10.2 gives you the ability to exercise the bylaw under a complaint and then require from there permission if they were to keep the animal. So I'm trying to work out whether 10.1 is necessary, particularly if we would exercise it in the complaint, because you have the power to be able to act in 10.2 regardless. So just wondering if I've missed something there, or if you could clarify that for me.
Yeah, so through Your Worship, again, 10.1 is referring in the main, it does have bull rams and whatnot, but it also covers the roosters and the peacocks. If we change it and pull that out, and give us the option to be able to do something after we receive a complaint, and in effect, we're really putting the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We'd like to be able to prevent, we know that if you're going to keep a rooster, it's going to crow. And peacocks make a huge noise, etc. So we don't really want to go receiving complaints like that. We can sort of put a blanket ban on that. And if there is some exception, if someone has got a large area and it's not going to be a problem, it's not an issue, they can apply for a permit.
And just one very final one, Your Worship, if that's okay, and then I'll jump off. Thanks very much, Jim. With that being the case, I don't disagree with that. I think then when we look at sort of bull, ram, goats, male goats as an example, they are probably separate. So I would personally support keeping, rooster, gander, peacock, as you've used in your example, but perhaps the other male dry stock animals could be covered in 10.2, in my opinion.
Just pass to the Chief Executive for a quick comment, Jim.
Thank you, Worship. Just want to make a point around maybe, 10.2, you create a lot more subjectivity around that. It's a lot more defensible in terms of, it's going to be an opinion. You've got to prove the nuisance. You've got to approve the offensive and all this other, what's the word? I'll put my glasses on. Injurious to health. Those then become more subjective sort of matters that are quite often harder to meet a threshold. If you go to no person shall have, it's black and white. And from a regulatory point of view, and going back to even my previous roles that looked after regulatory, these aren't easy to actually get across the threshold in terms of going down this path. And they all create a fair amount of work. And 10.2, having it in there, would, my opinion, triple the amount of work that we would have to do to manage the complaint, whereas 10.1 makes it a little bit more black and white.
Thanks, Brian. Jim, did you have anything further to add before I go to the other councillor?
Through Your Worship, no, I'd agree with the Chief Executive's comments that it is, it just adds more time, and more difficult to gather evidence to act in an enforcement approach.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Wards, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Long on the queue. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate that. Jim and Joelle, great amount of work's gone into this. One, if I can just go back up to it's page 108, when you talk about the current bylaw, in 7.3, a comment was made by Federated Farmers during the submissions around slaughtering of animals and whether or not if people were driving by and they happened to see a farmer who had to, unfortunately slit the throat of a sheep or had to deal with a cow that needed to be put down. Sally from Fed Farmers was concerned that that could be held against a farmer in doing that stuff. So I see it's still in there. I don't know how to get around that, but I know that she made a comment to me that it hadn't been minuted, her rejection of that particular portion of the bylaw. She didn't want farmers to go down the track of having to get permission to, put their stock down for, for reasons where the farmer makes the call that they need to be put down, and that someone who's driving along cannot be seen from beyond that rateable property.
I'll talk to that. There was a word left out of that the slaughter part of the bylaw, which was meant to say, and in 6.19.1, that the words urban area were missed off. So it won't apply to farmers at all. They can keep going.
Right. Thanks for that, Joelle.
Thanks, Councillor Wards. Councillor Johns.
Your Worship. Just a couple of things, Jim. What age is a ram? And the reason I ask that question, it's becoming quite common for commercial sheep farmers not to dock ram lambs, not take the tails off, earmark them for balls, because it gives them a check on growth, and if it's a good season, they can at weaning, those lambs go to slaughter straight away. Those ram lambs. In a town situation, someone on a 5-acre block next to a residential zone, and that's the other query I've got, urban area, I don't think is the right definition. It should be residentially zoned. We had that issue with the submitters last week or the week before last, where a number of them were opposed to the bylaw, and when we pointed out that they're not residential, oh, well, okay, so it didn't apply to them. Using urban area is confusing, I think, to the average person on the street. They could be on a 5-acre block surrounded by residential zoned houses, where it doesn't apply. Anyway, ram, what's a ram?
You wish I was beginning to wonder how I was going to formulate that reply. Well, I understand that a lamb is not really a lamb anymore, technically at 12 months. I think we're looking at the ones that are actively breeding and being used for that purpose. Just going back to the urban areas, that is actually stipulated in the interpretation at the start of the bylaw. So it means all areas that are not rural and include the towns of Dannevirke, Kaduna, Patea, Payatu and Woodville. So
it does lead to confusion though, doesn't it?
We're quite happy to clear up any confusion though.
I think the other comment I'd make, people that might have 2 or 3 ewes on got a paddock beside their house in town are likely, more than likely, to take the ewes to a farmer who's got rams and stick them in with his flock for a breeding period and then bring them home, than have a ram come to their place, in my opinion. You disagree?
In relation to the urban hutch, just remind me, in the definitions at the front of the bylaw, will we cover off urban in terms of what the actual definition of that, and potentially even, you got it right there, and potentially even could have maps showing where those urban area is, just to give that clarity.
Yeah, that is a continuation of the previous bylaws definitions. So, but we could certainly add the urban zone maps from the district plan.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Previous councillor Scott Gilmore, I fully support what he was saying. Roosters, gander, peacock, yep. But a number of submitters said that they were not happy with the horses, and also particularly the rams. They wanted them to stay, and also a lot of them were against complying and applying for permission to have something on their property. And I respect that. So as it stands, I can't support that submission.
Through your worship, just remind that actually those that did submit had existing rights. And I don't actually recall anyone that submitted that didn't either have an existing right or on one occasion they were actually in a rural area. And that's my recollection of that. So it wouldn't make any difference to them.
And through the worship, I'd be interested to meet somebody who likes having an unneutered male goat next door because they really stink.
Councillor Long.
Jim, you didn't put stags in there.
Well, we could add it if you would like.
Well, of all the animals, stags are the most dangerous at certain times of the year.
Yeah, that's correct. There's also fencing requirements that exist outside bylaws for years, so that would trump.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you. It was brought up by the CE. Is there anywhere in there, Jim, about the existing rights? Because I remember we sat in there for hours and these poor people come up from Paiatua and it was like, we're still allowed to do it because the town went to them. They didn't go to the town through the zoning update. So when you mention about these maps, so are they the new maps, the old maps, the existing maps? You see what I'm saying? It's quite an anomaly there. And is there any, I haven't seen anything in there about existing rights because that's where most of the problems came from.
So through your worship, the maps will change as the district plan changes and as urban growth creeps, which is why we place them in the schedule so that we can replace the schedule without having to review the bylaw again. The existing use rights, you're correct, they aren't mentioned in the bylaw. It does come under the RMA, but we can put a mention of there.
It's covered on page 111, 6.1.8.3.
I missed it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's not on you. Thank you, Ben.
And apologies, councillors, we have taken the toughest one first because of Joelle's availability on time. So it has made this a little bit messy. Councillor Wards and Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks, me, Tracy. Can I just take you to page 110, Jim and Joelle? The concerns about the impacts on the events and shows such as the AMP show. Am I to read that 6.16.3 means because they're currently using that site for that, then there's not a problem? I mean, I have a feeling when this comes back out, because it doesn't say one way or the other, that we're still going to get people saying, well, does that mean we can't hold the show? I think, and a little bit of, I guess, what Councillor Wallace was going to is do we have to be really, really clear that you've been holding the show there since 1910, you can carry on doing it, sunshine. I know why it's written that way, but yeah. It just, I mean, the recommendation says it notes the concerns about the potential impact on the ability of events and shows, but it doesn't say, don't worry, does it?
Through your worship, no, it doesn't say that. But it will, the existing use rights is covered. And there'll be many properties, not just the AMP organisation. And I know there was a lot of interest from the AMP, but we don't really want to be getting into a situation where we have to keep noting down every address that's got an existing use right. So,
yeah, no, fair enough. Thank you for that, Jim.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore, and then I've got Councillor Sutherland. If you can get those tough questions out of the way while Joelle is here, it's appreciated.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Just wanted to quickly touch on and I suppose ask Jim and Joelle if there's any way to do this. It goes a little bit to what Councillor Johns was talking about of, what is an urban area, what is a residential area. And I think a lot of the angst for this particular bylaw isn't about a built up residential area. I think most people would completely agree that they don't want to have an unneutered male goat right next to them in a very, very built up residential area. Where the angst is coming from is probably those properties that are more on the outskirts, properties that have been zoned as residential or zoned as being part of the urban area, but effectively they are still farmland, or they're very farmland adjacent properties. And so I wonder if there is anything, because, if a neighbour doesn't want to live right next to an unneutered male goat that smells, as Jim pointed out, they still do have the new 10.2 to be able to lodge a complaint. It's sort of clearly within there. But do we have any way of, I guess, creating a differential between what is a built up residential area that, we will imagine that this bylaw is there to target, and what is a rural adjacent property that just happens to be as urban?
Joelle, do you want to give some advice on that? Because I think this is going to be a sticking point.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think the suggested changes are to allow stock in general. So when you're talking about the issues about urban area, we are just now talking about those male animals that have been identified as a particular nuisance, and commonly throughout New Zealand are a particular nuisance. It is incredibly difficult, as the Chief Executive has pointed out, to enforce these bylaws when people are allowed to keep these animals, and there may just be council acting on nuisance effects. It is significantly easier to enforce when there's just a blanket rule that there will not be rams. When we're talking about sort of built up areas, really these nuisance effects are for anyone that's living residentially, and that can be on those outskirts areas as well. People are still close by and still
feel those nuisance effects quite easily, which is why the urban area has been defined. You could consider narrowing down the urban area, but that would be difficult, and you'd be having to constantly change it as subdivisions occur. This is from a legal perspective anyway, easy, clear, and it will be provide significant ability for council to actually act on the numbers of complaints it receives, which is a lot of complaints.
Is that helpful, Councillor Gilmore? We don't have much further time with Joelle, so I'm just keen to get that, try and get as much of this sorted.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. It is helpful in the sense that I do understand the reason for it. I suppose what I'm trying to weigh up is whether that ease is actually worth it by adding extra compliance on it. I just had one very quick question while Joelle's there, and then I'm out. It's on the same topic, if that, with your permission, Your Worship. We did talk briefly when I chatted to Jim about the review process. So if there are permits or permission at any of these points, a concern that I had was arbitrary decisions being made. And so I think it's just worthwhile to mention, I don't know if it can be added into the bylaw, what the review process is. My understanding is if someone wanted to review that, it would go through to a hearings committee. But I think that might also give some people some comfort. So I just wanted to quickly get your thoughts on that, if that's okay, Joelle and Jim.
Yeah, sure. You're right. The permitting does add a concern that there could be some sort of bias creeping in, or subjective or objective views. There is at 14.7 of the draft bylaw, so clause 14.7, that any person who has an application declined or revoked by council or disagrees with the conditions set out in their permit may apply in writing for a review of the decision, and council may review it accordingly. And then I think council has separate guidelines for how that process works out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just thinking about the difficulties with some of the zoning, and I do recall one submitted that were rural, but then got changed through a district plan review to residential, and had intentions of maybe subdividing, but due to a number of other rules were prevented from being able to do anything with it. So effectively it was a rural bit of land, but I think we're about to go through that district plan review. So those sort of, then there's not a lot, those sort of areas that get caught up in this unintentionally. I think when we go through that, it'll be good to run some of this alongside it. So those little areas, I would be sort of recommending that gets changed back to rural as part of it. And there might be some of that picked up through that process. And because you oversee both of them, Jim, keep both hats on as we go through that process. So maybe that's just a bit be a little bit more helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, me, Tracy. I've been thinking, Scott had the same thoughts that I did. It was really about review or appeal processes. Some district plans are quite formalised. Some councils keeping animals are quite formalised with their appeal processes and things, and have a committee or have a. So was that just to try and make it easy, if there was in this, because what we don't want to do here, I know what we're trying to achieve, but we don't want to apply great layers of bureaucracy and time and effort. If just for my observation, do we have a permitting system under the current bylaw? This is new, is it?
Yeah, the permitting is new for this particular bylaw.
So that's what I thought. So it's a little bit unknown, really. So we'll probably need to monitor that. But just the concerns about the venting around the place, like A&P shows and Paiatua and the Matamau horse events. I just, the terminology, keeping of animals under that area of the Act, that could possibly be expanded a little bit, couldn't it, to cover those? You know, the terminology about keeping of animals, and it says ownership and the care for them, all this. If that was a concern, if it was a big enough concern, we could put into the keeping, and we could exclude certain areas, couldn't we? Which would be quite easy then. Just a thought more than a question, but
You could absolutely think about exclusions. As I think it's already been mentioned, the more exclusions you build into a bylaw, the harder it gets. I have to say, from an enforcement perspective, it would be really difficult for council to even take action against, say, an AMP show, because it's a one-off event. So proving a nuisance, which you have to do to be able to prosecute under the bylaw, would be very difficult.
Stop here 24/7.
Ask Joelle before she needs to leave.
Through your worship, I just point out about the permitting. It's not a new thing. We're trying to bring us more into line with the rest of the country. We have done a bit of research, and there's a lot of councils that require permits for keeping of animals in urban areas. There's 3 pages of them. So we're probably the odd one out, actually, at this present point in time.
Yeah. They've always made note of a number of times. They're on these.
Thank you. Right, councillors, because there is messy going through those recommendations, I'm going to take us back to the start of the paper and noting that we've got had the opportunity to ask Joelle while she was here. Some of them. Right. Thank you, Ellie, for outlining that. Back, and we'll start at item 6 unless anyone's got any questions prior to that. There was some submitters did comment on the number of days the submission was there. That was quite standard, although I think in future we'll try a little bit longer, perhaps with 6 weeks on some of the future consultation that's coming up around bylaws to give a bit more time. So through number 6, the alcohol bylaw. If you need to go, Joelle, you're welcome to. Alcohol bylaw is page 99. Are there any queries there? The recommendation is on that same.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, just a question. Proposed the second submission proposed reducing the number of alcohol outlets. Is that within the power of this council?
Through your worship, yes, that is, but through the development of a local alcohol policy, which we're developing at present.
Further questions? We do have the recommendation for that policy that the council notes the support for development of a local alcohol policy, and that the concerns raised by the second submitter are matters that can be dealt with through the implementation of a local alcohol policy. Can I have a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Chase, and a seconder. Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. Right, 6.2, the cemeteries bylaw. Queries on that, noting there was only one. Sorry, Councillor Gilmore, I was just going to say I did ask Jim if all funeral directors had been directly contacted, and he's responded yes. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. I suppose I just want to, and maybe this is through you to Ali, just to get some clarification on some comments that Ali made when we first started looking at this paper, and it was to the effect of we're in a quasi-judicial process, and that we really can't make any changes that were not brought up in submissions. So I suppose just as a process thing before I jump into some comments over this is, what would be the outcome, Ali, if we were to not approve this bylaw? So when it comes up for final vote, I just know that they have to be reviewed within a time frame. If we weren't to approve it, does that mean that we could then go back out and rerun consultation and then go through the process again? So I just want to get that in my mind before I make some comments.
Probably throw this one back over to Jim to jump in as well, but if you weren't, you've had a submission, it's an operational thing that will be referred to officers anyway. But we've gone out for consultation, asked for submissions. This place we're at now is council's asked to consider matters raised in submissions, and if you want to make any changes to the bylaws based on those submissions, to make resolutions on that. If not, we'll take the bylaw as it was through to council for final adoption. But if you were to, not adopt the bylaw or want to send it back for consultation, that's just going to start, would have to start from scratch. It would be a lot of officer time. We'd have to reconsult and go through the whole process again.
Great. Thanks. That probably helps up.
Brian, for a quick comment.
Clarification around that. You can review a bylaw. You don't have to wait for 5 years to review a bylaw. So a bylaw can be reviewed, but it will still have to, if there are significant changes to that bylaw, then we have to run through the process and consult on those changes as well. But minor changes can be made, I think, generally through a resolution on an ongoing basis.
Thanks for the clarification. I suppose just to share my concerns with this bylaw, I'm very, very concerned about the lack of submissions that we received. This is a bylaw that I actually thought would be potentially our most controversial one. We've put some quite large changes in there. I respect what Her Worship has mentioned, that all funeral directors have been contacted. That the problem is because we don't have any submissions. If anything came out of that, we wouldn't be able to consider that within any changes. I do think that perhaps we can learn a little bit from how we advertised our consultation. Absolutely acknowledge that we met all of our statutory obligations, but with something like this, which does have some quite big changes, I am concerned that that some people will be quite unaware of the changes. And really, for me, the purpose of consultation is genuinely trying to obtain feedback and information from communities of interest and from people. And in this case, I don't feel like we have a lot of that information. Now, within that, that's why I was trying to get my head around the timelines of it, because I certainly have no desire to increase officer time and officer work when, as the Chief Executive mentioned before, we're very time poor. But we are running a number of tranches of bylaws, so this was one tranche of them. And so my preference for this one, I don't have confidence that we have adequately obtained the views of our community on this bylaw for me to get enough comfort that people are happy with it. So my preference would be to potentially not vote for it when it goes up for adoption, so to vote against it and recommend other councillors do the same, and then it can go into the next tranche of bylaws and we can actually get some genuine feedback from our residents. So just thought I'd share that, and I'm happy for any comments.
Thanks, Councillor Gilmore. I'm just going to go to Jim and also to Joelle for some comment on that, if I can, please.
Through your worship, I think we might be treading into dangerous territory when we want to resubmit bylaws for consultation, even though they've been out for the required consultation period, just because we didn't receive enough submissions. When I contacted the funeral directors, for example, I spoke to them all, and one in particular said she had read it, loved it, and didn't think she needed to make a submission because she thought it was great. So unfortunately, she didn't put that in writing, but people have seen it. We can't make people submit. The only real legal part I can see where you would have grounds to put it out is if you significantly want to change the bylaw again, and then you would have to put it out for consultation. So as far as timings go, the cemeteries bylaw was created in 2018. So that was a new bylaw then. New bylaws have to be reviewed for the first time after 5 years. And then after that, they go on a 10-year review period. So you get 5 years, it has expired. We're now in the overflow where the Act allows us 2 years to fix it, which means it would have to be completed by next year. Now, we've got enough on our plate already with the other bylaw tranches that are scheduled for next year. So we're really pushing it for time. So my view is it's been out for consultation. I know we didn't get a lot of submissions, but you know, it was there, it was out to be seen. People saw the keeping of animals bylaw. Yeah.
Can I make a quick, just a follow-up question to perhaps get some comfort around that, Your Worship?
Okay, I have got the Chief Executive wanting to speak. I'll allow that, and then I do want to capture anything from Joelle as well.
Appreciate your discretion, Your Worship. Thanks for that, Jim, and I certainly understand the constraints. I know that we can't use this to make changes to the bylaw, but I'm very interested to hear that you had a funeral director being really comfortable with the bylaw. You mentioned that you've contacted all of the funeral directors in the district. Were there any significant concerns raised when you did that? Just to give me some comfort.
So through your worship, I contacted all 4, of which there are actually only 3 because one bought one company out. So one, the one down the road actually, was very happy with the bylaw, as I said. The other 2 chaps said that they'd seen it but hadn't read it. I sent them a copy of it, including a copy of the statement of proposal to their personal email addresses, and they haven't bothered to get back to me.
Okay, that could indicate there's no concerns. So thank you for that, Jim.
Thank you, Bishop. Just a quick point is that you also run the risk of going through this whole process again and still only getting one submitter. And I understand, you know, the concerns around that, but sort of my experience is I think the animal bylaw was different to my experience in terms of the amount of attention it got, but general bylaws for whatever reason don't tend to get a lot of submitters through them, unfortunately.
Have anything further, Joelle?
No, thank you, Worship. I was just going to reflect what Brian has just said. I don't see this at all as being abnormal, having a lack of submissions. It was approved by council too in the draft form that it is, and I don't think there should be any questions around it now.
Right, thank you, councillors. If there's nothing further, there is the recommendation there that council notes the submission and refers the matters raised to officers. Can I have somebody move that, please? Moved Councillor Wallace, seconded Councillor Franklin. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Public Places bylaw. And I have got one question in line, Councillor Petty-Weber.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just reading through the public places bylaw, and we've had some submissions from the Defence Forces and network operators. I also thought, you know, we supported Akatio to have a boat ramp and there's tractors on the beach that take boats to Akatio Beach, and plus Herbertville where they launch their boats also is quite a few kilometres away off the road. So it doesn't really take into effect that people actually have to use vehicles to get access to the beach, especially with our coastline.
That's a great point, and you've had some submissions there about possibly removing the prohibition on vehicles on beaches. The current public places bylaw, just for your information, says that any person wishing to gain access to a beach must use the designated access routes where available, which is the wording in the new draft, which shouldn't be an issue there. And then the current bylaw says no person may drive any vehicle on any beach except on any area which is set aside by council for that purpose by resolution from time to time. I have no idea whether you actually have those resolutions in place for Akatea or not, but that current wording could be put into the proposed bylaw, which should alleviate those concerns.
Yeah, it's just probably Herbertville is like Akatea has the area where you're meant to launch your boat. Herbertville doesn't. Like there's no designated area on the beach where you're meant to drive your boat to the boat ramp. Yeah, where they launch. So I guess that's just the one thing that concerned me, that a lot of people go down there to get kaimoana and they unable to take a vehicle on the beach. They won't have access. Yeah.
Through your worship, I think we could write it in so that if a direct access way is provided, it's to be used, and if there isn't one, I guess then yeah.
Councillor Chase.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. What about those property owners who have their own private access to get onto the beach? Are they restricted from using their vehicles to get onto the beach, or?
Technically, they are currently also, unless there's specific council resolutions in place, which I don't know about. It's an example of how the bylaw might say something in practice might be slightly different, and as long as there's no issues arising, there's never going to be any action taken. Certainly look to cut out an exemption, specific exemption on the bylaw.
That's currently in place.
Just can't think of any properties that do have that. Oklahoma.
Space station. Quite a few. Really look at it.
Yeah.
We've not ever had any complaints. It's whether it's
Specifically, that's exactly it. I mean, the bylaw is there to address nuisance and complaints. So I've been here almost 3 years and I haven't received any complaint about that.
Sutherland looking.
Yeah, I've done the same myself for 30 years. Akatio, and I've never seen a council offer running up the beach with a flag, but I don't think it's likely to happen going forward. I think if we try and put too many exemptions, you'll just create it bigger and bigger. I think, I think we let sleeping dogs lie myself. Yeah.
Okay, is there anything further questions on that? I think just around the 6.3.5, the stock crossing, that was an area that we did have some feedback on and some confusion on as well. Did you want to make any comment on that, Jim?
Through your worship. So at present, we've shifted the requirements of the stock crossings from this bylaw into the schedule so that we can remove that easily without having to review the entire bylaw again. When we develop the new stock control bylaw, which will be hopefully early next year. So all the requirements for stock crossings, stock movements, underpasses, all that sort of thing will be in one place.
Noting the recommendations, we've just got a question mark about whether the council wish to put in exemptions for defence activities, emergency services, and including UAV operated by network utility operators.
That up. So the recommendations are on page 101, and as Ellie said, we do need to discuss the exemptions for defence activities and emergency services, noting that we do have a direct relationship with the 1st Battalion. And I know that if they were to request anything, and with the fire service and our emergency services, that has happened in the past, not particularly out in some of those areas, but it's something that I'm quite happy to support those services with. Jim?
Just through your worship, just pointing out that the defence activities are covered in the district plan in relation to noise they can make.
How do they need to be separated from the emergency services?
Yeah, an option available, which you'll see is in your current traffic bylaw, is that there can be an explanatory note which simply states that the bylaw or that those specific provisions, at least of the bylaw, don't apply to emergency vehicles being used in an emergency. And you could say, or to New Zealand Defence Force vehicles used by the New Zealand Defence Force, just to be extra clear, because obviously we never want to take action against an ambulance going to
I think unit gone into the recommendation.
That we include the violence not like that. And then we just got the question about network utility operators asked about exemptions for UAVs that they use.
While we're on that subject before, through you, Mayor Tracy, emergency vehicles, they also include diggers and bulldozers for opening up a river mouth or something like that. Would they?
So that'll be covered under a different.
So the UAV operated by network utility operators, they are a necessary part of it, and they would obviously have their own guidance and best practice that they adhere to. So I don't have any issue there. What's the best way to write that in?
I'd support the submission with the as worded. I'd possibly recommend adding at the end of operating UAV, except those operated by network utility operators, and I'd say in compliance with civil aviation rules, just to be very clear that they still have their own rules to comply with there.
That's fantastic. Councillors are comfortable with that. For that one is on page 101 with those two notes. Can I have favour, please say aye. On 6.4, the keeping of animals bylaw. First recommendation, and that's 103, that the council notes the general feedback received about the proposed amendments to the bylaw. Over that we received that. Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Franklin. All those in favour, please say aye. Right. Moving on to 2, requiring every cat aged over 6 months to be microchipped and desexed.
Was that to hormones?
Deputy Weber, seconded councillor Wallace. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, recorded councillor Long. Right, 6.10, issue 3, amending the current limit of 3 cats per household where an officer acting on a complaint believes the number of cats is offensive to a requirement that no more than 3 cats are kept on a premises, urban or rural, except with the approval from council, with exceptions for vets, charities such as the SPCA and catteries. Any questions or clarification on that? The recommendation is on page 105, that the council approves the wording of section 7, keeping of cats, as follows. 7.1, no person may keep more than 3 cats on premises except with the approval of council. Issue 4, adding the requirement, clause 5.2, that animals are confined within the boundaries of the property where they are usually kept. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Like to include cats.
Can I just, before we just take that motion, move that motion, when we talk about catteries, can I just check, we've got, with the exception of vets, charities such as the SPCA and catteries, would that include Woodville Animal Welfare? I'm not sure if that includes them. Thank you. Right, so we've got the recommendation on page 105. Can I get a mover? Franklin, seconded councillor Chase. All those in favour, please say aye. Against councillor Long, and I'll record that. Thank you. Right, on page 105, issue 4, adding a requirement, clause 5.2, that animals are confined within the boundaries of the property where they are usually kept, excluding cats and bees. Right, there's some comments there in the recommendation on page 106. If there's no questions on that, that the council confirm the inclusion of clause 5.2c within the animals bylaw. Seconded councillor Long. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Issue 5, 6.12, requiring people to refrain from taking any action towards feral animals as to cause them to be a nuisance, and requiring abatement from the nuisance caused by feral animals. There are some comments there. Are there any questions? The recommendation is that the council councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, could I get Jim just to give us a broad outline of that issue 5, please?
In relation to taking action towards feral animals, through you, your worship, we've got a number of properties that feed feral cats for some reason, and we don't want to encourage that. So it's a major issue, especially in Woodville.
Do you have another?
Oh, just through you, Mayor Tracy. I'm sorry, I didn't understand feral animal to me as a rabbit, hare, or a deer, or a pig. Yeah, wild hare.
No, the feral cat population is growing. Actually. Right, so the recommendation there that the council confirms the inclusion of section 12 feral animals within the animals bylaw. Can I have a mover? Councillor Wallace, and a seconder, councillor Sutherland. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Issue 6, adding hive limits based on property area for urban areas and hive setback and location requirements. There any questions? The recommendation is that the council approves the wording of section 6, keeping of bees, noting that clause 6.1 is not a new clause and is the same wording as the existing clause 12.4 in the current bylaw, and notes that the requirements in clause 6.3 requiring notification to council of location of hives is the same wording as the existing clause 12.1 in the current bylaw. Can I have somebody move that recommendation? Councillor Wallace and Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Issue 7, regulating, prohibiting the keeping in an urban area of roosters, ganders, peacocks, stallions, bulls, rams, and unneutered male goats, and restriction on grazing stock except sheep in an urban area. We've had some questions already answered. Are there any further questions? Councillor Gilmore?
No, I'm just going to be here to vote.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, Councillor Johns? You didn't have one? Okay. So the recommendation is on page 109, that the council amends clause 10.1 as follows. No person may keep in an urban area any rooster, gander, peacock, stallion, bull, ram, or bull, ram, or unmuted male goat except with the approval of council. That council deletes clause 10.2, which was no person may keep or graze stock excluding sheep in an urban area except with the approval of council. That the council amends clause 10.3 and renumbers it at 10.2 as follows. 10.2. If in the opinion of council, the keeping of stock in an urban area is or is likely to become a nuisance, be offensive or injurious to health, council may, by written notice, require the owner or occupier to obtain approval of council, which may be subject to such conditions as may be considered necessary by council to reduce the nuisance effect. That the council includes the following guidance note below clause 10.2. The guidance note is clause 10.2 does not apply to stallions, bulls, rams, and unneutered male goats where clause 10.1 applies, or to pigs where clause 8.3 applies.
Your Worship.
Yes, Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a request, could we take the recommendations 10.1 and 10.2 separately?
We can. Okay. Right. So we'll take those recommendations separately, noting that in the guidance note. So the first recommendation is 10.1. No person may keep in an urban area any rooster, gander, peacock, stallion, bull, ram, or unneutered male goat except with the approval of council. Moved by Councillor Johns. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Franklin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against?
No.
No.
Councillor Long, Councillor Gilmore, and Councillor Wards.
Thank you.
Motion has passed. 10.2. Right, yeah, we'll do them as one. So for the remainder of motions, which is 10.2 and noting the change in 10.3, can I have a mover and a seconder for those? Councillor Johns, seconded. Councillor Wallace. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, issue 8. Ensuring persons can apply for permits, approvals from council to keep animals and providing a mechanism for such permits to be reviewed. Any questions and comments on that one? Recommendation is that the council amend clause 14.1 as follows. Every person who wishes or is required to obtain approval from council, a permit, under this bylaw must make an application to council in writing and must provide any supporting information and application fee as council may require. That the council amends clause 14.5 to include as follows: stock in urban areas. A, the number and type of stock to be kept on the premises. B, the size of the premises and proposed location of stock. C, housing details including space, shade and shelter. D, fencing. And E, effluent disposal. I have a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Sutherland and a seconder. Councillor Chase. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. You're against. Councillor Long recorded against. Issue 9, 6.16, concerns about impacts on events and shows such as the AMP show. Had some previous questions on that. The recommendation is that the council note the concerns raised in submissions about potential impacts on the ability of events and shows to continue to be held at the Dannevirke AMP showgrounds. Mover and a seconder for that. Moved Councillor Wallace and seconded Councillor Franklin. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. 6.17, page 111, issue 10, simplifying the requirements for the keeping of pigs in an urban area where approval from council continues to be required. There are no submissions there. The recommendation is that the council confirms the wording for section 8, the keeping of pigs. Okay, so all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. 6.18, issue 11, the impact of zoning changes for rural properties that are rezoned as urban in the future. We have had some questions there before. Is there anything further? The recommendation is that the council notes the concerns raised by submitters about potential impact from future zoning changes and advises that section 10 of the Resource Management Act 1991 would apply to those circumstances. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Wallace, seconded. Councillor Franklin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against,